Hi, this is Bill Rowe for St. Louis Audubon Society, and I'm here to give you a little introduction on bird watching, or as we call it these days, birding. It's a very popular hobby and getting more popular every day. And if you're on this call, I assume that you're interested in nature in some form or other. And there's many, many paths to pursuing that interest. But one of the easiest as an entry point is birds. And one reason for that is that birds are the most visible of all animals and the most easily observed and identified. Mammals, most of them hide at night, or they're small and look rather plain. Lots of other animals are interesting, but they're not as easy to track and observe as birds. And that's probably the reason birds have become so popular. But other reasons include the fact that birds are everywhere. You can see them anytime, including every day of the year and any time of day, even at night if you want. And they come in an amazing variety of shapes and sizes and colors and sounds. So their diversity, the birds are fairly diverse, nothing like insects, which are incredibly complex, but worldwide there's about 10,000 plus kinds of birds that grow slowly by the year. In North America, north of Mexico, there have been over 900 found. Most of those are regular and breeding birds. And in the state of Missouri, it's over 400. It's about 435 birds that have been found in our state. So what do you need to go birding? What does it include? Well, the most important thing, the most important piece of equipment is a pair of binoculars. If you don't have any, then you ought to consider investing in that. Because without them, yes, you can see a lot of birds, you can identify some of them, but you'll miss out on beautiful views, lots of the fun. So here's what binoculars look like. Nowadays, this is a typical shape and size. And there's a lot of ins and outs and tricky things about finding and choosing binoculars, but I'm just going to make a simple recommendation. There are two statistics that you look for. One is how much does it magnify? And birding binoculars range from about 7 times to 10 times. So that's called 7 power or 10 power. It's printed on the binocular, and this one that's right here in the middle. And the other statistic is how wide these big lenses are at the end in millimeters. A middle-sized binocular is around 30 to 32 millimeters, and a full size, the bigger ones like these, are 40 to 45 millimeters. Either one is fine. Either one will give you a good view if you pick the right pair. They should be comfortable for you. And so as a reminder, here's what I'm recommending. I'm recommending 7 or 8 power and 30 to 32 millimeters, so it will read like 7 by 30. Or for full size, I'm recommending 7 or 8 power and 40 to 45. That would be like these. The difference mainly is in weight and convenience of carrying. Full size binoculars are a little bit heavier. I wouldn't initially go up to a 10 power binocular, even though that's what I use and I like. I think you'll do better with the 7 or 8 power initially. There's a lot more. Price is an issue, but we have to move on. The other essential piece of equipment is at least one good book or field guide to help you figure out what you're looking at. The one I recommend for starting, for people who are just beginning, is this one by Ken Kaufman. You kind of see what it looks like on the cover there. It's called Field Guide to Birds of North America, but all of them are pretty much called that. So there's a lot of different ones. But this one is covers the whole continent. It's nice and concise. It's illustrated with photographs. Here's a page of jays. And on the other side, like every other field guide, it's got some text and a range map to show you where the bird lives. On this page, you can quickly tell that only blue jays are found here in Missouri. These other ones are elsewhere. But it's a very simple, clear, well-expressed field guide for all of North America. Another one, as a supplement or a backup or more info, is the small Sibley guide. And this one is just for the eastern US by David Sibley. This one is illustrated by his paintings, which are great. And it will simply give you a different view of each kind of bird. And you'll learn more from one, more from the other, but the combination is nice. And there's others. There's the latest edition of the original Roger Torrey Peterson guide, which is also great. At any rate, the thing about these two pieces of equipment, your binoculars and your field guide, is that neither one of them existed in the 19th century, in the 1800s. So there were many people interested in amateur ornithology at that time, but the hobby of birding, as we know it, hadn't begun then. It started in the early 20th century, so it's been going about 100 years. The best approach is you can either go out strictly on your own and just wade in and start looking at birds, or you can join a beginner class, or you can go on a beginner bird walk. The St. Louis Audubon has a schedule of these. Unfortunately, as you know, everything that's a group effort, like a bird walk, has had to be canceled because of the pandemic. However, going out birding is not canceled. It's perfectly okay, and it is definitely within the guidelines of the governor's announcement that outdoor recreation is not prohibited or even discouraged. So people can go hiking, for instance, and basically going birding is just hiking with your binoculars on. So you by yourself, or you with a partner or a couple of other people, can easily go out and go birding. So let's do that. I think we'll take a little virtual field trip, and the place I've chosen out of the many, many good areas around St. Louis is Bush Conservation Area out in St. Charles County. And I am now going to split my screen and show you a little PowerPoint. And here we are. This is our virtual field trip, making sure that we have our social distancing. If you are with an unrelated person, you stay 6 feet or more away, you don't carpool, and you don't share equipment. You don't hand your binoculars to them, or your lunch for that matter. Okay, so let's go to Bush Conservation Area. It's a nice diverse area with many habitats. And we'll start at one of the little lakes where you enter the area. They have a lot of little lakes there, and a couple of big ones too. And on the lake, we might see a pair of blue-winged teal. These little ducks are migrating through in big numbers right now. You see them almost everywhere there's a wet spot. They will mostly move on north to the prairies and nest there. Occasionally they nest in Missouri. But we do have another common duck which does nest here in wooded areas with a lot of water, and that's the beautiful wood duck. Here's a pair of those, and again, we have a good chance of seeing a pair of wood ducks as we walk around Bush. Okay, let's keep going with what we might see around the ponds and the lakes. Besides waterfowl like ducks, we might see long-legged wading birds, such as this great blue heron. This is our biggest heron and the only one that spends the winter with us, but he is common pretty much everywhere, and you'll see him sitting still or striding around in the mud, looking for fish and frogs and the other things that he feeds on. We also might see newly arrived herons, like these great egrets. These are almost as big as the great blue heron, very handsome with their white plumage, yellow bill and black legs. And there's a number of other herons and other wading birds that we might see as well. In addition to these large ones, we might see some shorebirds. For instance, our familiar little killdeer, which everybody knows who lives out in the country because they nest all across Missouri, usually in gravelly areas, and they have a characteristic loud piping call. That's where they get their name. It kind of sounds like killdeer. But we have a shot at seeing many other shorebirds too. For instance, here's a sandpiper. The name of this one is the pectoral sandpiper, and it's passing through again in big numbers right now on its way to the Arctic, to the tundra, as a matter of fact, along the shores of the Arctic Ocean, where it nests, and then it makes a huge migration south in the fall, all the way to Argentina, and then back again in the spring. So these guys spend a great deal of their lives on the wing, migrating from the far north nesting grounds to the southernmost winter grounds. And on the way, they stop over at our mud flats and our shallow water, and they recharge with the small animal life that is their food, insects, worms, little crustaceans, and stuff like that. Well, are there any other water birds to worry about? Well, if we go to the big lake, they call it Lake 33, we might see some ring-billed gulls, as you have here. Those are the ones in front. That's our common medium-sized gull that you see most months of the year and almost anywhere. But we got lucky this time. We also see some terns with it. Those are the guys with the black caps and red bills. They're called Caspian terns. There's several other kinds. They're migrating through, and we just happened to hit it lucky today. We saw a nice group of both these gulls and terns together. So let's go on and look in the woods some now. In the woods and soaring overhead, we might find some birds of prey. You usually see a few on any given field trip. This is a beautiful adult red-shouldered hawk. There's a number of those that nest out at Bush Conservation Area. Another that we might see is the little American kestrel, which is a small falcon. This is a male with these beautiful colors. He's also in the middle of lunch. I guess you can sort of tell that if you look around his bill. He's eating some kind of small mammal, but we don't know what it is. Or another possibility around the big lake is our national symbol, the bald eagle, which has bounced back from a nesting population of 0 in Missouri to 200, maybe 250 nests across the state. So if you ever think the Endangered Species Act doesn't do any good, remember the bald eagle. We also might see a bird of prey like this barred owl that just happens to be hanging out where we can watch him in the daytime. Of course, they're nocturnal. You hear them mostly at night, but nonetheless, it can sometimes be seen out in the daytime, and he'll fly away if we get too close. So let's go into the woods, see what else we can find. This is a tiny little bird. We go from the pretty big ones now to the very small. This is called a blue-gray gnatcatcher, and it is actually one of our commoner birds of the forest, but you have to listen for its thin little calls and look carefully for it to be jumping around up in the foliage. It stays with us for the whole summer and then goes south for the winter, south meaning to the tropics. This is an example of the large flycatcher group. It's an eastern phoebe, and you may have those around your house, especially if you have a little pond or something, or if you're on a farm and have an outhouse or a barn, you might have phoebes nesting under the eaves of that. But flycatchers are perky little birds that sit upright, and they will fly out and catch a bug or two and then go back to their perch. Also in the forest are several kinds of woodpeckers. 6 of them are regular residents, meaning that they live here all year round. This is our smallest one. This is a downy woodpecker with a little stubby bill, black and white colors, and the little red patch on his head means that he's a male. So this is probably the commonest of the woodpeckers, but the easiest one to hear and see is usually the red-bellied woodpecker, somewhat bigger, close to the size of a robin, with that red sort of hood on the top of his head and a zebra striping on the back. It is not the same as a red-headed woodpecker, which is equally handsome, but a different bird with a fully red head. And then there's several others, and most people really like woodpeckers. They're easy to watch, easy to discover, fun birds. Now, just arrived from south of the border, another what we call a neotropical migrant species. That means it wintered in Central or South America and then came back to us, but it's going to nest here in our woods, is one of the 15 or 16 warblers that stay in Missouri to nest. This is called a Kentucky warbler. And as you can see, it's a gorgeous little bird, bright yellow with a black face pattern and a rollicking loud song out in the woods. So there are Kentucky warblers breeding here and there in the woods out at Bush. Other breeding birds in the woods include the tanagers, which are also coming back now. This is a male summer tanager. Let's keep looking. Also the wood thrush. There's several migrant thrushes that are plainer than this one, but this is a wood thrush, and he too is just back from south of the border and singing a fluty piping song out in the forest. We'll also see a number of birds that are not our resident nesting birds, but are just passing through, only for a period of weeks, and then they're gone farther north. This is called a palm warbler, P-A-L-M, totally irrelevant name because they don't breed in palms. They breed in the northern spruce forests up in Canada. But they come back through, they pass through in April and May, and then come back through again in September, October, the other direction. We'll also see, we have a chance at seeing another perhaps 20 kinds of warblers. Here's one, a common one called a black-throated green warbler, nesting in northern pine woods, passing through both directions. But birders go out looking for these in April and especially May, and again in September and October, because this is our only chance to see them here at St. Louis. They aren't here in the winter and they aren't here in the summer. Here's a third one of my favorites, gorgeous bird called a golden-winged warbler. You can see where the name comes from in that case. Less common than some of the others, but very, very striking. Let's see what else we have. Oh, here's another warbler. This one's much plainer, but it's very vocal, and its song will ring out on the streets of your suburb, perhaps in the middle of May. It's called a Tennessee warbler. Where do they get these names? That's a whole nother question that I don't have time for. Probably that the very first one described to science was found in Tennessee on migration. But this is another warbler that goes all the way up to the boreal forest of Canada for its nesting. Now, another group that we can find some of out at Bush is the sparrows, and this is a chipping sparrow. Probably on the lawn behind the visitor center is a good place to look for these. It's a common little bird and easily identified in breeding plumage. And then another one that we can look hard for, we have to find a field of grass that hasn't been mowed. So it's long, dense grass. And if we get lucky, we'll hear the little insignificant song of the Henslow's sparrow. Again, where do they get these names? That was named by John James Audubon for a friend of his. Any rate, Henslow's sparrow is an uncommon little bird, but it does occur at Bush, and it's a real cute one of my very favorite birds. So there's what we can see on a typical field trip. We've seen about 25 birds here on this show, and if we went out and spent, say, 3 hours there, we could probably double or triple that. So an average trip to bush right now, this time of year, might give us 50 to 70 species of birds and many, many views of a lot of them. So it would be a lot of fun. Only thing that messes it up would be a heavy rain. Birding is terrible in the rain. So, oh yeah, one last one. As we go back, we pass by where the tree swallows are nesting in their box, and they're parked here on the sign to rest before they go back to the nest box. So please check this out. This is the St. Louis Audubon website. A lot of resources and information on there. One of those is a full list of birds in St. Louis. You go to, as it says there, the birding menu, and you look for STL bird checklist. And of course, you can learn more and you can join, which would be a great idea. So now I'm going to pass it over to Elizabeth, and she can tell me if anybody has had a question that they'd like to hear about.
Yeah, we've had a couple questions come in. Also, I was going to ask you to just reintroduce yourself. I think some people were still joining the room when you got started.
Well, I can drink my coffee.
Okay.
I'm Bill Rowe. I'm doing this for St. Louis Audubon Society. I'm a volunteer. I'm a board member and a volunteer trip leader for them.
Great. Thanks,
so
Bill.
That's why I get to do this.
So our first question from Mitch, do you have any recommendations for birding apps?
Well, I should have mentioned that there are several good birding apps, and I don't have them myself, but they are very handy to upload onto your smartphone and carry around with you. I don't personally think that they completely replace the field guide, but I do think that they can be very handy, and there's one under the name of Audubon, put out by National Audubon, and there's another one by Sibley, the author of the Sibley Guide. So if you look up Sibley app, that should do the trick, and you'll find out how to order it. I think some of them can simply be downloaded from the App Store.
Great. Emily asked if I am having trouble identifying a bird with my field guide. Can I send a picture somewhere for someone to help?
Yes. We have talked about that, about actually having that as a resource on the website. But meanwhile, yes, you could, if you're having trouble, you could send it. One second. Go ahead and ask another question while I write this out.
It looks like Mitch said, regarding help with bird ID, if you're on Facebook, you can post it to the STL Audubon page or message it to us and we can help with the ID.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I was going to, they can use, actually, I shouldn't be doing this in public, but I will. Go ahead, send it to me.
Looks like it's ROWEMB45
at
gmail.com.
Don't all do it at once. Okay. Yeah, no, I'd be glad to help you out with that.
Great. And then Karen said Audubon is the only one I've used and I like it a lot, I think, regarding the birding app.
Okay.
Amanda asked, do you have a favorite unsung hero bird that's common in our area? Something maybe we see all the time that you think is underappreciated?
I have a favorite bird in our area that I think a lot of folks don't really know about, and it's called a Mississippi kite. And please watch, does Amanda have access to our Facebook page, or is she a member?
I'm not sure.
By the way, I'm not screen sharing anymore.
Amanda, yep, I can get to the Facebook page. I am not a member.
Okay, if you can get to the Facebook page, watch for a feature that's coming out once per week on Monday called Bird of the Week. Okay, and it just highlights one species, but within about 5 or 6 weeks, the Mississippi kite will be the bird of the week.
And
So
then,
if you want to learn about what I'm talking about and what they look like, and that would be the time and place.
and Katie just said, "Oh, I saw a Mississippi kite once in my backyard."
Yes, that's
Pretty.
that's my point.
And Amanda
They're
said,
they're around here in the suburbs, and they're really cool, beautiful birds.
Yeah, okay. Amanda said, "Great, thanks so much." And Megan and Nick asked, "Do you have any recommendations or resources for cameras to use when birding?"
Um, I'm really not the person to ask. I have one that I carry and use. It's called a Canon PowerShot. Others use a small one called a Nikon Coolpix. There's many iterations of that. So I'm not really the expert on which one to pick. And then, if you want a better camera with well, I shouldn't say better, but a larger, more expensive camera with a longer lens, you're talking to the wrong guy. I don't have that stuff. So, but the little Canon PowerShot, it does an amazing job for its size, taking digital photos and having a zoom feature, so you can take fairly long distance shots.
And Katie said, "Getting the picture is the hardest part." Catherine Werner said, "And for an interactive citizen science app that is free to download and use, consider iNaturalist. We use iNaturalist to gather observations of birds and other species for the STL City Nature Challenge, which starts tomorrow, the 24th.
Yes.
Megan and Nick said, "We like to use the Merlin app for identification."
Yes. And what Merlin does is takes your photograph and identifies it for you. It isn't always 100% accurate, and I don't know whether it really explains what are the features that make it that bird. Maybe they could tell me. Does Merlin give you any explanation, or does it just give you an identification?
And then Catherine said, "I get the Bird of the Week emails from St. Louis Audubon, and they are terrific. I always learn a ton."
Good. Glad to hear it. That means we'll keep doing
them. Yeah, great. And then Mitch
we
said,
do expect to keep those going through the whole year, by the way.
"Cool." And Mitch said the Canon PowerShot series is pretty inexpensive and quite good. And then I think our last comment is Karen Meyer said, "The apps can be helpful to listen to the songs so you can identify, but you must be careful not to play them too loudly and confuse or aggravate the birds."
Right.
And I believe that the iNaturalist app also can identify species for you if you're not sure. And that looks like all our questions.
Okay. Well, we have come to within a minute of the end. So thanks, everybody.
Perfect.
That was fun.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Shall I sign?